Hey guys, welcome to today's video. In this video, let's create a muffler that is kind of a classic exhaust muffler. And the reason for this video is because let's take a look how we can use ArrayMesh and Booleans in conjunction with modeling, just to see how we can quickly arrive to something that looks like this. All right, so to get started, I have this kind of a rough reference just so I can follow. And that's going to help me just a little bit. So to get started, what I need to do is I need a cylinder, right? So let's click on this little box here and let's just load a cylinder 3D. That's fine. And by default, if you attempt to sculpt on this, it's not going to let you, right? So when you are grabbing meshes from these tools here, you have to make them make ArrayMesh 3D, right? So as soon as you do, you can see all the UI has been activated, and now I can actually deform and change this object, right? I'm thinking of the muffler, and I'm also showing this technique if you're making like a cool, weapon or something. A lot of times you have the same effect where you just need those holes. You can use it for that as well, obviously. But in this case, I'm just going to make a muffler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the cylinder and I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to have two of them, okay? And what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to use first cylinder as the base, and the second cylinder is going to be the array mesh that we can just create holes with, right? So let's hide one of these, and for the holes one, I'm just going to make it maybe a little bit smaller. The height of this is fine, and let's do this. Let's jump into something called ArrayMesh, and in here let's just do let's turn it on, and let's do this. Let's figure out how many of these do we want. I'm just going to do 8 for my repeat. And you can see there's 8. If I start dragging this offset right here, you can see, you're going to be able to see these guys kind of moving aside, and you can see there's actually 8 of them, right? But I'm not, I don't really need to do that. I'm going to keep it at 0 for now. And what I want to do is I want to rotate them. So I'm going to rotate them for the X amount. Let's just go ahead and type in 360. And I'm going to press enter. You can see what that looks like. It looks like a big mess of craziness, right? But what we can do next is let's jump into the next one to the right, which is called pivot, right? And now if we change the Y value, right, if we start dragging this, you can see how they're going to start spacing out themselves into a circle. And that's what I want, because I'm going to use them as Booleans to create holes in my base mesh, right? So this is pretty much perfect right here. All right, very cool. So now let's do this. Let's say make mesh, and go back into our subtool. And you know what? I'm going to jump out of the perspective view. Let me turn on my base mesh cylinder. Let's go ahead and select it, and let's just put it in the center. Holding down the shift key, I can rotate it 90 degrees. And let's just maybe scale it up. And I'm going to scale it about halfway between the circle. And if I wanted to see through it, of course I can do transparency, and you can kind of see through it, right? You can see that it's about halfway. Something like that should be perfect. Let's jump out of transparency mode and let's take a look. All right, next let's do this. Let's select this layer and let's move it to the side. Hold down the control key and drag out another version of this. And we'll just eyeball it. We'll just do something like this as far as the spacing goes. Next, I want to center the pivot. So let's go in the side view and let's click on this icon here. That's going to center our pivot. And now if we rotate these, you can see that we can go between the other ones, right? So I'm just going to eyeball it and do something like this, right? I'm going to go in this view and you can see what that looks like. Very cool. Now if I do control and drag, I can unmask them, and now holding down the control key, I can make maybe more copies of them. Let's just go somewhere right here, and then release control and just keep dragging. And I'm just going to do, a couple more. Very cool. Now if I do control and drag, you can see what I'm left with. Now if I go back into my other layer, I can just simply scale this up, and this is going to be kind of my base shape for my muffler. Next, let's turn on our polyframe, and you can see the whole thing is this. Let me turn my perspective on. You can see the whole thing is one polygroup, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into polygroups, and I'm just going to say groups by normals, and that's going to separate this mesh into 3 groups, which is great. Now to create this extrusion here, what I can do is I can go into zModeler, hover over a face, press spacebar, and let's just do an inset. And I'm gonna leave it on polygroup island, that's fine. And let me just do an inset and decide on the thickness of this, right? So maybe I'll do something like this. Next, I would like to make an extrusion. So I'm gonna hover over a face once again. Let's go into, it says polygon actions. I'm gonna go into a extrude mode, and I'll do polygroup all, that's fine. And let's just simply take this, hover over a face, and pull this out. All right, that's pretty perfect. Now, what happens if I wanted to bend this? What if I want to bend it a little bit? I know my reference doesn't have it, but maybe I want to create kind of a cool cartoony bend for my little muffler here. How would I do that? So what I could do is I can hover over an edge, press spacebar, let's say insert, and we'll say multiple edge loops. Next, let's just click and start dragging. I'm gonna drag up, and let's just create a few loops for ourselves. So we'll do something like this. I think this is more than enough. I'm gonna let go. Let's go back into polygroups and do groups by normals one more time. And that's going to organize our mesh one more time. All right, next, I wanna make it hollow. So I'm gonna hover over a face, press spacebar, go to delete, and let's do polygroup island, and let's just simply click on this guy here. Now if you wanted to see the double-sided, just turn your double on, you can see that. And I definitely don't want this one here as well, so I'm going to press delete. All right, now I'm left with something like this. Next, I would like to add some thickness to this. How do we do that? I'm going to hover over a face, go to extrude. I'm going to say all polygons, and let me just start extruding this out and give myself a little bit of a thickness for my muffler. So just decide how much you want. I'm gonna go with something like this, that's fine. To actually punch the holes through, let's go into subtools. Let's turn on this little button right here, jump out of the polyframe mode, and make sure your live booleans are turned on as well. If they are, you will see something very similar to what I'm seeing here. Let's add a little bevel here. So to do this, I'm gonna hover over an edge, make sure you're still in ZModeler, and let's go into a bevel, and let's just give ourselves a nice cool bevel here. All right, so this is looking pretty cool. Next, let's go ahead and add a little bend to the end of our muffler. I'm gonna jump out of the perspective view. I'm gonna grab my move, click on the little gear icon, go into bend curve, and make sure your symmetrical is turned off. And for the resolution, let's just dial this up just a little bit to, I'm gonna go with 5. And now what I could do is I can grab this yellow dot and just start turning it. And this is exactly what I was looking for, something along these lines. Let's go back into the gear and just say accept. Okay, now we have something like this. To subdivide this, I can go into geometry, and let's go into crease, and let's do crease borders. I'm gonna click on this button, and now if I press Ctrl D a few times, you can see that I can smooth this out but keep my edges nice and sharp. Now I can change the material to something that makes a little more sense, maybe this metal one, and there you have it, right? If I wanted to do a quick BPR, you can see what that looks like. Next, if you wanted to bake this in, just go into your subtools and just find something called Boolean, and then just click Make Boolean Mesh. As soon as you click on it, you can see a new mesh was added. If you go into it, you can see there's no more layers, right? And now this is a baked mesh. All right, so this would be one of the techniques you can use to create something like this. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in our next one.